Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're reviewing the BMW M Roadster. Now this is the first generation of the M Roadster, and this specific vehicle is a very special car to me because it's my dad's car. Kind of a cool history on this. My mom and dad have only owned about 6 cars combined in their entire life. And my dad has never really owned his own car before the M Roadster, at least nothing that he chose out for himself before getting this car. Now, I grew up in a large family. We had 4 boys in the family. I'm the third of the 4. And my parents had a very fixed income growing up. So my dad didn't make a lot of money, and then my mom was a stay-at-home mom with all of us. And so we grew up on a very fixed income, and we didn't have very exciting cars growing up. We had a GMC van when I was younger, and then my mom got a Dodge Caravan a little later on after having an accident, and that was pretty much it. We got a Chevy Tahoe later on, nothing too exciting. And then my dad had a hand-me-down 1969 GMC pickup that used to be my grandpa's, passed down to him in the 80s, and so it was pretty old when he got it. And then, you know, it was never a very exciting truck. Although looking back on it, we do have fond memories now that it's gone. But not exactly the dream car that you look forward to growing up, especially as a car enthusiast like my dad. Now, with all that said, you know, he drove that for many years, and then when his kids were in high school, knowing how important it was for a high school driver to have a car to use, he let us use the truck and he walked to work. Really cool move that he was willing to make that sacrifice so that we could drive this pickup truck and walk to work. He dreamed of getting an M Roadster for many years, looked at the Z3, and then eventually, you know, the M Roadster is kind of where he landed on sort of his dream car. But, you know, a lot of expenses raising 4 kids, and then when we went off to college, a lot of money that he was spending to help us pay for school. Now, what was really cool about the M Roadster is this was kind of his gift to himself after helping his kids get through college. So over all those years, made all those sacrifices, and then when my younger brother was just finishing up college and he'd basically, you know, done his part to help pay for school and take a huge burden off of all of us with huge school loans when we graduated, celebrated by buying himself this 2000 M Roadster. He's the second owner. I think it had around 27,000 miles or so when he got it. So, you know, pretty low. Most of these types of cars are. It's now got 57,000 miles on it. Spends a lot of time in the garage, and he takes it out, you know, when he wants to go on a joyride or just enjoy driving. Still, you know, has walked to work quite a bit over the years just to save the miles on the car and be able to leave it in the garage and take great care of it. And it all shows because the car is in excellent condition. Now, of course, given that whole story with the M Roadster, had to go with the Vanity plate up there on the front with Dad's M. Very fitting for a dad who made a lot of sacrifices and was, you know, deferred getting this cool car for himself for all those years. Now on to the actual review of the M Roadster. The M Roadster is based off of the BMW Z3, which started production in 1995 as a 96 model, continued production through 2002. They started production of the M Roadster with the 1998 model year and carried it again through the 2002 with the rest of the BMW Z3. Now the Z3 was first popularized by the James Bond movie GoldenEye, and it was #1 in the box office when the Z3 was new. There was a short appearance in which James Bond was driving a Z3, and after that video, BMW basically sold out on all orders of the Z3, and it kind of solidified itself as a very popular roadster for many years. The Z3 has since been replaced by the Z4, but for people like myself, there's just something about the Z3 body style and M Roadster that is just so classic and perfect that I don't feel like the Z4 quite reaches with its more modern look. There's just something about how perfect this style is, and really I think a lot of BMWs from the 2000s, that was really kind of a golden era in my mind as far as the style of the vehicles. Now the Z3 that was in GoldenEye had some unique features. That particular model was fitted with Stinger missiles behind the headlights. It had an emergency parachute braking system and a radar scanner in the dashboard. The Z3 and the M Roadster are the very first BMW that were produced outside of Germany, exclusively outside of Germany. So they didn't build any M Roadsters inside, or M Roadsters or Z3s inside of Germany. They were all produced in Greer, South Carolina. So that was definitely a unique step for BMW with this vehicle. They've since begun or continued to produce quite a few of their vehicles out of South Carolina. So it kind of set the stage going forward with the M Roadster. Now, the Z3 was available in number of engine options, ranging from 114 horsepower, 1.8 liter inline 4-cylinder engine, all the way up to this 315 horsepower, 3.2 liter inline 6, which is on the M Roadster. There were also some 6-cylinder options available on the Z3, but the M Roadster is where you got the most powerful engine configuration. Now, some of the differences between the Z3 and the M Roadster, in general, they have a very similar appearance, but there's a few things that really kind of separate the two vehicles. One of those is on the side here. You've got a slightly different grille than what you've got on the Z3. It's a little bit more dramatic or pronounced than what you see on the Z3. So that's one of the characteristics. The wheels that come on the M Roadster, these are a 17-inch wheel, different style and really good and aggressive look compared to the Z3. The biggest thing that varies between the M Roadster and the Z3 is this rear wheel track. So the car is actually wider in the rear. Those fenders stick out more than on the Z3. And with that, you get a really wide rear wheel, which is good for additional traction and acceleration. You get the M logos throughout the vehicle as well, both inside and outside. You can see inside on the steering wheel, you've got that logo as well. Floor mats have the logo, so it just kind of sets it apart a little bit. The interior on a lot of the M Roadsters is a two-tone leather as well. My dad, that was one of the things he was really adamant when he bought this, is that he wanted a solid black interior. A lot of them come with this kind of middle insert as either a blue or a red, green as well. And so kind of unique color options that are available on the M Roadster that were not available on the Z3, but in this case, you know, my dad wanted to stick with just the solid black. The other thing that's kind of different is up front. This front bumper lower spoiler is different on the M Roadster than what you've got on the Z3. And then one of the things that I missed when we were at the rear of the vehicle, this is critical, is that quad exhaust, which looks awesome. The Z3 does not come with the quad exhaust option. Believe you can get single or dual exhaust on those, but this quad exhaust gives it a really nice sound. Obviously, it also improves the horsepower, but let's be honest, the sound is probably the best thing about it. The Z3 and M Roadster are available in a number of different transmission options. On the Z3, you can get in either an automatic or a manual. They've got 4 and 5-speed automatics, but if you go with the M Roadster, comes only in the manual. You get that 5-speed manual. The other couple things that separate the M Roadster from the Z3 is that you get a much larger brake on the M Roadster, which gives you better braking performance than you had on the Z3. So quite a bit larger diameter. You can see them through the wheels there. And then these mirrors on the side are a little bit more dynamic, kind of wing style mirror than what you've got on the Z3. Now, a couple other minor things that are different inside the vehicle. You can see all these gauges here. This is actually one of the things my dad is kind of picky about on any vehicle, is he hates to see a little blank cover plate on vehicles. And so that was one of the things he liked about the M Roadster, is that it's got all of the buttons and gauges where they're supposed to be. The M Roadster comes with engine oil gauges in the center console. On the Z3, those are not, they're basically blank. So that's one other thing that kind of separates it. Now the other thing that separates the M Roadster is that it comes with a limited slip differential, which again just helps with that handling compared to the Z3. Now with all those kind of facts and figures behind us, just looking at the car overall, like I said, I am a huge fan of BMWs of kind of the late 90s and early 2000s. Seemed to me like that was just kind of a sweet spot in their design language, I guess. More recently, they've gone to kind of more aggressive edges, and well, I guess they went through a phase of really aggressive edges. They're kind of changing again, and I'm actually kind of a more a fan of the most recent BMWs that have been coming out. But it's just got such a sleek look to it, really timeless. Obviously, being a little two-door convertible roadster, there's just something sweet about it. Looking back at like old British roadsters, my dad was actually a big fan of the Triumph TR6. That was his dream car growing up, and so I think it was really natural when the M Roadster and Z3 came out that it was a good fit for kind of his taste along those same lines. Now the BMW M Roadster is not an incredibly fast car, but it's pretty quick given the era that it's from. Given that it's just a naturally aspirated 6-cylinder that's now 18 years old, it's still fairly quick. 0-60 is about 5.4 seconds, so not bad. But the thing about this car is that it's not the speed that makes it so much fun. It's the size, it's that it's convertible, that quad exhaust. It's a fun car to drive because of the experience, the sound and the feel that you get when you're driving it. Inside, it's got a really nice classic interior with all those circular gauges and the little chrome accents. It's just nice, simple, timeless look to it in every way. Given again that it's an 18-year-old car, the way that it's aged is impressive. It just has maintained that good look quite well. Now my dad's got a hardtop that he puts on this vehicle. Obviously it's got the soft convertible top, which is electronically controlled from the gauge in the middle. But he's got a hardtop that's removable that you can just basically take off in one piece. And so he uses this car in the winter time, and he'll put the hardtop on at those times. It's a feature that you can buy after the fact if you're in the market for a used Z3 or M Roadster. Gives you a little bit more functionality in adverse weather conditions. Although I'll tell you, with the rear wheel drive, and at least with the tires that my dad's got on this vehicle, it does not handle particularly well when you get in snowy conditions or rain. This vehicle has ventured out in those conditions before on rare occasion, and it's not ideal, but I guess it can manage barely. Now if you are regular to the channel, you know I've got an Audi Q5 and a Toyota Tacoma, both vehicles that I really like, but getting in this car and driving it just for a few minutes even reminds you of kind of how dull those are in comparison, and how cool it is to have a vehicle like the M Roadster. And the thing that's really kind of cool about these cars is because they're getting up there in age, you can actually get one for a pretty reasonable price now. Z3s, you can get those as low as $4,000 or $5,000 that are running in an acceptable condition. With the M Roadster, they've actually maintained their value pretty well given the age. But you can get one that's higher mileage for somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000. So, given what it is, it's a pretty good value to get something that's, going to be a classic, or I guess already is a classic, but it's going to continue to probably hold a place in people's hearts, and long term down the road is probably going to be worth quite a bit. With the Z3, the fact that you get one of these for about $4,000, you're not getting the same horsepower, it's not quite as nice looking, it's not as great of a performer, but for $6,000, who cares? It's still a fun car to drive. It's still convertible, it's still small and nimble, and I think that's pretty cool that, you know, they've been around long enough that there's an opportunity out there for people that aren't looking to spend a lot of money to get something like this. And I actually have been thinking of maybe buying a third vehicle, just kind of as like a fun car. I don't have a great garage for something like this, but for somebody that's got a great place to store it, to spend $5,000 and get something like this, in my mind would be a great investment, money well spent. I also forget how fun it is to drive with a manual. It seems like manuals are becoming so much less common on newer vehicles. I mean, especially if you look at the level of like supercars, really high-end cars, they've got their little paddle shifters, which, yeah, shift really fast, but it takes away a little bit from the driving experience. And, you know, back in 2000 when they were building the Z3 and the M Roadster, there were no paddle shifters. And so, you know, you get to go back to the days of just good old-fashioned manual transmission. Yeah, it's just fun. It adds a little bit to the experience of driving. Now, I've always felt like if I was going to buy a sports car, you've got to get a convertible, because otherwise you miss out on hearing the exhaust. That's one of the best things about driving a sports car, is that you really get more immersed in the whole driving experience. If you're driving fast, you've got the wind blowing in your face, you've got it blowing through your hair. You really, you feel like you're more immersed in it. You don't have to be going as fast to feel like you're driving fast, and you get to hear the beautiful hum of those quad exhausts behind you. You know, with the top on, you miss out on that. I mentioned that my dad has a hardtop that he can put on the vehicle in the winter time, and I hate it when that top's on because it just takes away from the whole driving experience. In my mind, if you're going to drive an M Roadster, you might as well drive with the top off all year round. But then again, he's trying to take good care of the car and probably doesn't want rain and snow inside the vehicle, so I guess it makes sense. But I don't know, if you're driving fast enough, it just goes right over your head anyway, so it's not a big deal. Now, like I said, my dad bought this car right when we were finishing up college, and because it was, you know, really a special vehicle for him that he spent a lot of time saving up for, and, you know, put a lot of thought and energy into making this purchase. I haven't had many opportunities in my life to drive it because I was already moved out by then, and it's a very special car to my dad, so he didn't necessarily want us to be driving it that much. So the number of times I've driven this vehicle has actually been fairly limited. So just driving it today, even, in some ways it's almost a new experience because I don't get to drive it very often, and it's a blast. It's just so small, and you're so well connected with the road, the sound, the feel. It's a ton of fun. Definitely would recommend that if you're in the market for a inexpensive sports car, the Z3 M Roadster would be a great option to consider. If you're not in the market for a sports car, I think you should still think about it. For $4,000 or $5,000, getting a used Z3, can't go wrong. Until you start paying for repairs. I've heard BMWs are expensive to repair, but not from my dad, because this car has actually been pretty flawless. He's, you know, spent a little bit on minor maintenance over the years, but nothing major. It's got 57,000 miles, so it's not, you know, real high up there at this point. But, you know, even so, you know, it's still 18 years old, and it's been a pretty flawless car for him in the time that he's owned it. Like I said, has a lot to do with taking good care of the car, doing regular maintenance and bathing it, and he's certainly done that in the sense that it spends a lot of time in the garage. He's very timely about oil changes and you know, other routine maintenance. So that's a review of the M Roadster. If you've got any comments or questions, leave them in the section below. For more videos, subscribe to my channel. In the meantime, thanks for watching.